This is the Adirondack Bucks and Beyond podcast. Here we go.
Oh, what a hog!
Take him, Corey. Attaboy.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Adirondack Bucks and Beyond podcast. Today it's Brad, myself, and our guest, Christian Bills. Christian, thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I think we wanted to kind of start off. Well, first tell us like a little bit about yourself and kind of what you do, and
Sure.
we'll go from there.
So I live southern Adirondacks, Edinburgh on the Great Sacandaga Lake. I own a tree company excavation business up there, so we work local in that area, which is awesome because you're outside all the time and get to experience, the outdoors, and it keeps you in touch with the wilderness for sure. So, and then wintertime we do select logging, which is awesome.
Okay.
Get you in the woods even
That
more.
is awesome.
So you're seeing deer year round, which makes it nice. And, but yeah, so lived there my whole life. My grandfather and great-grandfather owned a logging business up there at one point and had over 5,000 acres at one point in that area. And they were avid hunters. Like November hit, they shut down the operation until everybody's buck tag was filled. So,
Sure. Now, is that kind of how you do it too? Like,
to a degree, it's tough because you get you have a little accountability to customers, so it's tough to. We try to definitely take time in the fall and allow time, and it works out good because usually once we start getting snow, it slows things down. So then it's perfect for.
Yeah,
for the
well, it
hunting
seems
side.
like, a lot of guys who are in the tree business are just naturally big buck killers.
Yeah, pretty much if you run a chainsaw for, to earn your money every year, you're probably a wicked good
Yeah,
deer
you
hunter,
probably
too.
kill a lot of good bucks. So, which will lead us into our next topic. I want you to talk about the buck that you killed this past season. It was a 200-pounder, correct?
Yeah, yep. So we never actually had a scale, but there was 4 of us in there that have killed a lot of bucks. We've seen a lot of bucks hang on a scale. You could just tell it was a different looking. The way the buck looked laying on the ground, you could tell it was over 200. We figured probably right around 205. It was early season too. I think it was November 7th was the date on it. But yeah, so we've always hunted the same area, and we wanted to try and get a remote tent camp in there. It was kind of the spot where, like, there was some hills in there where you can just get to them for a day hunt, but by the time you get there and day hunt it, by the end of the day, you're shot. And if you kill one, then to
you
get
gotta
out of there, so you're either leaving it overnight or trying to pack it out that night. So we had set up a tent camp, or we decided we were going to do a tent camp. So we went in.
How deep in were you?
We were 4.5.
That's pretty good. That's
a
pretty
good
deep,
hike.
man.
We
Yeah.
had a foot trail most of the way.
Okay,
and then,
you did.
Yeah, so that makes, if you can get on a trail, you can cover, you know how it is. You can cover distance quick on a trail. So, we were 4.5 to the tent camp. We'd gone in a few times throughout the summer to kind of scout out a spot. The 4 of us, there was a group of 4 that we decided we were going to try it this year and make a go of it.
The Adirondack Nomads, right?
Yeah, there you go. The Adirondack Nomad. So, so we'd gotten this spot. We just poured over topo maps forever, trying to find a spot where we thought was going to be a good location, where we're not sending our scent up onto the hills in the morning from the camp itself, and just trying to find an area where you had a lot of options to hunt. So when we got back there, we could, if something didn't pan out, we could go to a totally different section of woods. So.
And every time you get into those spots, it never looks like what you expected to.
No,
So then you get in there and you're like, well, we don't want this spot at all, actually.
Yeah.
So that's exactly. So we went in, and there's a big fly that we wanted to set up on. We wanted to be near a fly. For one thing, if we come down in the dark, you hit the fly, and it's easy to follow to get back to your tent camp. Just saves a lot of hassle that way, and it's always and normally we always find a lot of the buck signs right around these flies and wet areas back there.
No doubt.
So we picked a couple spots. We got back there. Well, we started looking around, and we couldn't find water for one thing, and you got to have some sort of a spring or whatever. So we finally found an area, and we're like, yep, this is where we're going to set up. So we were going to leave and walk out, but we were going to walk another direction and throw some trail cameras up. Well, we crossed over this fly and come up the other side, and on the other side, there's an abandoned tent camp over there. Bunch of old firewood cut up.
Really?
Perfect spring coming out of the side of the hill. You could tell it had been a long time since anybody had been in there.
Right.
So naturally.
Wow, that's
pretty
awesome.
crazy.
That's the
Yeah.
spot. So what was crazy to us is that you look at a topo map and there's just nothing. It's a huge chunk of woods where we're at.
Yep.
And for two guys to pinpoint, somebody at some point had pinpointed that spot and been there, and it's just weird how that buck hunter mindset is, and everybody
good
thinks,
reasoning.
to find another tent camp was really, which I say tent camp, it was just a couple, you could see where they'd cut some logs off and piled some
Right.
wood up, but it was so rotted out, it probably had been 10 or 15 years since anybody had been in there. So,
Right,
that's
right.
cool.
so we left, set up some cameras, headed out. Me and one of the other guys came in 2 days before we were going to go into tent camp. So we went in on a Sunday afternoon. So we went in that Friday before and brought our stuff in and set up the tent and stuff. And I wanted to check that camera. So we went up on the hill and he'd left a camera in there too. So we pulled our cameras. We hunted the day. It was so hot. Early season last year was brutal.
super hot.
It was 70s most of the time.
Sure, yeah.
So you never hunted in there with the muzzleloaders. You waited till rifle came
We waited
open.
till rifle. Yep. We had hunted a little closer to the road with rifle and with the muzzleloaders prior to that.
Sure.
But it was like there again, it's just that far enough distance that it's tough to day hunt it. So we had made up our mind we were going to get in there and get set up and get our stuff in there. So we go in. We just kind of still hunted a little bit and grabbed our cameras, and we were just kind of working off each other. Never ended up seeing a deer that day. I think it was just the weather was the biggest thing.
Right.
So we headed out. Well, when we got home, pulled the SD cards, and we had a couple of really nice bucks on it. So right there, immediately that goes out to our group text.
Sure.
We got
right.
bucks in there.
Everyone's fired up.
So which is awesome going into that. It was
Boost
all
of confidence.
Yeah, all of our first time doing the tent. I tent hunted with another group before, but never on my own and heading it up kind of. So
Right.
so we checked the camera, had a couple
Real
nice
quick with the trail cameras.
Yes.
So did you put these on mock scrapes or on just areas you thought bucks had moved through?
So the camera I hung myself, our tent camp's right at the base of a hill. So I went up the hill a little bit, and I was just going to hook around. It's above pretty good body of water, like a stream that runs down through there. It's not quite a river, but runs year round, doesn't dry up. So I'd gotten up on the hill kind of above that, and I was just kind of looking for either a good runway to throw it on because we had been in there in summertime, and I wanted to try and hang it then. So,
Right.
So I was looking for either a good run or just something that you just felt like you'd get pictures
Something
on.
that you're just going to inventory bucks on, basically.
Exactly.
Like, verify, like,
Yep.
okay, we got some
Yeah,
good
like
we got
there-
some good ones back here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I found an old migratory runway is actually what it was, and I'm sure it's still used, and it was beat in pretty good. So this is all new territory to us. I've never even hunted this hill before in my life.
Right.
And so I get up on there, find this good runway, so I throw a camera up on it, and I made a mock scrape. I mean, it's summertime, so I found you kick dirt up in the middle of the woods, and deer cannot resist it.
They can't.
It
They
doesn't
can't.
matter if it's
Yeah.
a scrape, just a fresh
Sure.
rub or scrape in the ground. And
It's something with you could even smell it too. When you kick
Yeah.
that
Oh,
dirt up, it's
absolutely.
like instantly you could smell that soil coming up.
And he beat me to it. I mean, you did exactly what I was going to come to anyways in our own experiences. We've had so much luck with trail cameras in the big woods, just kicking a scrape out. Sometimes we'll piss in it ourselves,
Oh, yeah.
and
Oh,
we will get
absolutely. Yeah.
bucks all over it. It's amazing. I mean, they'll hit it within a couple days of us making
Yeah.
it, if not that night.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, as- once they smell that, they're like, I got to go check that out.
Yeah,
who,
and then
who made that?
We've noticed too, and maybe then they'll take it over too. A lot of times, once you make it, we found that same buck will come back
Sure.
to that scrape if it's in his territory.
Yeah.
He doesn't like what happened.
It was-
you know,
it was-
he's
He's
looking
like,
for.
I need to figure out who's doing
Yeah,
this.
exactly.
We had one of the biggest bucks we've ever got on camera hit a mock scrape that we made within it might even have been that night or
was
the
like
night
day-
after,
yeah, or a
and
day.
it was just eerie to think that we'd been in there and this friggin' hog was right within. He knew we were in there setting those cameras, and he had to come
Yeah.
down and check it out after. That was pretty
And
awesome.
he kept hitting it too.
And then
he
he-
still
he-
hits it to this day.
He still hits it to this day.
yeah, it's pretty cool.
So you guys got up in there.
Yep. So on my camera, I had a real nice wide 10, short tine, not super tall tines. We get a lot of those. They big long beams on them with just little short tines on them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A decent little, I think it was an 8, and then I think I had a small 7 on it. So there was 3 bucks and this is only half a mile from our tent camp.
Yeah,
Which
what else is out there?
we kept telling ourselves, just remember at the end of the day, you're 4.5 miles back in the Adirondacks. You could walk out the tent door and you're in
hunting.
a great spot, you know? And actually, when we went back in the fall to get into the tent, there was a scrape 100 yards from the tent.
They'll work right around those tents.
yeah.
They don't care.
Well, and we were on the edge of that Vly, so they're running that Vly side and getting scrapes laid down there and stuff. So then my other buddy had that was with me had hung a camera, and he had a gorgeous 8, just perfectly symmetrical, nice rounded out just gorgeous buck. It's what you dream of. What you dream of.
Yeah, yeah.
So two definite shooter bucks, you know, back in that area. So we were confident going in. Not confident, excited, I should say that.
Right.
We had some good potential right there. So so we went in the first night we were in there. We headed in the morning. I think Sunday morning we headed in. So we headed in Sunday morning, got tent camp set up, and then we kind of all split. There was 4 of us, so 2 of us went each direction, and we were going to just kind of still hunt a big range back towards each other in the center. So we were each going to get, and the way it lays out, there's almost 2 hills coming from each direction. So we each had our own hill to work and kind of work back towards each other. It was so warm too. We knew the deer weren't going to be moving much. I mean, they can't at that point.
You guys had to move them to each other.
Yeah, exactly. So we said and it was bare ground, no rain. We hadn't had rain. It was so loud trying to walk on the leaves. You just couldn't.
Sounds like you're walking on popcorn kernels.
Exactly. Yeah. So we went that night, and the way it worked out is somebody always ends up beating somebody to where you're going to meet, you know? So what we always say is if you're the first one there, park it. I mean, you're in a saddle with 3 guys walking at you from every direction.
I'd be out there giving it the old.
Yeah, exactly.
Rather be running there.
All right, boys, push them right to me.
Yeah, I'm in the saddle. So it ended up happening. One of the guys got up in there first, and we all came, and he had a deer come across one of the top of the hills from. He never actually saw what it was, but he said he could just tell it was a big bodied deer just pounding the ground coming down through there. Never saw it. So right there, we're like, okay, this is going to work. We've got our spot. We got deer in here, you know, and we were seeing some sign, but it was, at that point, it was a little disappointing because there was no feed at all. There was no beech nuts.
Yeah,
there was
it was tough last year.
Yeah, the acorn. Nothing. So we noticed the acorn or the oaks spit their acorns super early. I guess with a super dry year, if they're not getting the water, they'll spit the acorns early to
self-preserve.
Exactly. Yeah. It's same thing with the apples, and there just wasn't a beech crop. So we immediately went back to the tent that night, and we said we're going to have to switch our game plan a little bit because our ridges don't have the feed on it. So where are the deer at as far as feed, you know? And this is early November, so they're still kind of, you know, laying out their territory. And November 7th had always just been a day that stuck out to me. I've had a lot of trail camera pictures on that day.
Yep.
And I just had a feeling that was going to be the day that we were going to do it. And usually the weather's not super harsh for kind of breaking into the tent camp game a little bit. So so we went back to the tent camp, and over the one ridge from where we were set up, I say ridge, pretty good sized mountain, there's a big stream that flows down. I was telling you about. I'd hung the camera above it. I said, we had a picture of a buck here. We know that stream's down in there. There's a lot of water, so they got their good water source. Even like our springs were there was nothing. So there wasn't a lot of water on the hills.
Sure.
Let's try hunting them low tomorrow. Let's go down. So we woke up in the morning. 2 of us went out around the far side, and the other 2 stayed kind of towards the tent camp on that ridge, and we hunted kind of this huge. I mean, it's.
Are you guys breaking off in the dark? Are you waiting for gray light?
No. So we tried to get up early and head out in the dark. So we were, when that gray light came, we were there. So hopefully, if they were up on the hills, we'd catch them coming down off maybe.
Yeah.
Because our plan at that point was we were just going to still hunt. You know, get up on a ridge or a bench wherever we could and kind of work off each other. And we had the radios with us, so we could communicate and keep, you know, within a kind of not a drive, but.
Like we were saying, radius of each other.
Yeah,
basically.
exactly. Yep. So we kind of got set up there, and we went. It was my brother-in-law was with me. We crossed the stream, went up the other side, and he was on the low side, and I went up on the side of the hill, a spot where I'd come from another direction and seen a lot of deer in there, and on the other side of the mountain, but never hunted this backside. And it ended up, I found some gorgeous spots in there. It was really, really nice. but the deer just weren't there. I was up higher, so I just wasn't finding the feed, and he was down near that water. And he said, as we were going, I put a couple deer past him right in the beginning. A couple of does ran right over, practically over them. And we were finding they were down in that low near the water and almost in winter ground already. They were digging in the ledge rock, pulling up green, into the ferns and the, and that's early for that.
Yeah, you don't really see that till the snow flies.
Exactly. You normally, you get that snow fly, and I'm looking for open ledges with green on them.
Oh, yeah.
That's where,
they had nothing else last year. That was all they had.
So knowing there were deer in that area, we tried to stay positive about it, and down along that river, we were seeing some that were crossing and jumping each other back and forth. And the other two guys on the other side, same thing. They put a couple out early on and saw running tracks. So we hunted along this till about lunchtime, and it was quite a distance there. And we the two of us each met up, and we could communicate with radio. So we kind of got a game plan together then. So we were going to make kind of a hook and go back towards our tent camp and get up on this next big ridge. Well, there's something, if I see a high elevation, I love to go across the top of it. Even knowing that I wasn't seeing sign up there, I just love going across the high. Yeah, I love the higher the better for me. I just have always done well with that. So, and my brother-in-law was fine with going. The way the hill split, it kind of had two ridges that ran to the top, so it worked out perfect because we each got on one. We each had our own area, so we started going to the top. While we ran into some massive, and there again, all new territory. I've never hunted this before. Ran into some massive ledges. So I start going up through there, and I mean like 50, 60 feet sheer ledge. No way. You'd have to come back down the hill and work around it.
Were you finding like deer sign in those ledges?
There was old deer sign, but at that time, I thought I was going to probably kill a bear, if anything.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because it just looked like bear country. Right. It was a lot in all the beech trees. You could see all the old bear nests in them and the claw marks up the side of them. So, and I said to him, I was like, this is bear country, So then you start looking like we're a little far for a bear here. So, especially a big bear.
4.5 miles back with a bear. That's a long drag out.
I kept saying no bears, but the one guy in our group, every once in a while he would just send a message over the radio and say, "I'm looking for bears over here." And I'm like, I don't know, man. It's a long ways. So, so the way it worked out is the two guys were kind of coming in. I guess would be west, and we were almost kind of out in front of them on this next hill out in front of them. So they were kind of like the hill they were on, almost kind of J-hooked back away from that river we were along, and we had crossed it, and we were on the next ridge kind of going up through. So I got to it's a pretty tall hill for where we're at, and I got up to the pretty high on it, and it just started turning into that spruce thicket. I mean, to the point
you can't even see 2 feet in front of you.
You can't see through it. You can't move through it. And all I'm seeing is bear sign. So discouragement started to set in a little bit. I was like, man, this isn't what you always have that vision of what it's going to look like and what you're going to find. And so I'm trying to stay, I'm like, I just got to get through this and it'll open up. Well, I just kept going and going and going, and it wasn't opening up. And I kept looking at I pulled up my Onyx and was looking at it, and like this elevation carried for a long ways on this hill. So I said, I've got to do something. I've got to get down below this a little bit or try and, blast through it and get out on the other side or something. Sure, and at this point we had decent radio contact between us, and we carry the Garmin. So a lot of times we'll just hit our mic and update each other so we can tell where we're at. And, so I dropped down a little bit and I hooked out around it, and I was able to find a decent spot and old runways in there, and up right on the top of that thing, it kind of came into a belly in the top, and I saw some pretty good buck sign in there for what I thought I'd never see anything up there. There was some big buck sign on it, some nice, hemlocks that were tore up pretty good, spruces. So they definitely use it at some point, whether it's too ledgy on the side, so they like to zip across that to get through there or what, not sure. But so I work across the top, and at this point I'm not really hunting hard. I'm just trying to get through it to get to something that I can hunt.
That's the worst.
Yeah. So and it's like a desperation feeling, like you feel like you're wasting your most value. And this is late in the afternoon now, and I'm like, man, I just got to get into something decent. So I checked my Garmin, and I look, and I made quite a bit of ground on these guys because they've got decent still hunting, and they're moving along nice. And And I sent him a message. I'm like, you guys care if I drop down into that saddle above you up there? I said, I just can't see anything, and the two hills kind of came together with a nice saddle up on top. And, if you hunt the Adirondacks, those saddles are a great spot to get into if you can. So, and of course, the guys I hunt with, they're like, yeah, absolutely. Like, that's where you got to get, So I walked to the edge, and when I get out onto the edge, there's kind of an open ledge there, and the view was just unreal. You're looking over the entire area where we're hunting.
Yep.
So, like, I was like, man, this is nice. This is a really cool spot, and you'd stop and take it in. And because you don't get there a lot,
right.
Especially on those open ledges like that where you can see good. So I hung out for a second and I dropped down in. Well, it was steep, and I'm trying not to slide down and make a ton of noise because it dropped right into that saddle where I wanted to be. And I'm picking my way down through there, and I happened to look out in front of me, and I thought I saw a deer going out through there. So I pulled up my gun, and I'm looking, trying to get a bead on it. And I couldn't see, so I reached over, and I must have turned my scope up to try and scope it out.
Right.
And I'm looking, nothing. That's I don't know. It must not have been a deer. So I gave it a minute. Said, well, these guys are kind of getting up here, so if I'm gonna do this, I've got to get over there so I don't mess up them coming up across this ridge. So I work down in, get over there, find a spot where I can kind of see decent, and it opened up a little bit, but it's still all beech whips with little spruce trees in it. But it's a spot where you feel like it could happen.
Yeah. Right.
So I get in this real steep little gully, and I get up on the side of it, and I'm just kind of hanging out there a second, and my buddy Mason calls on the radio, and he says, I got running tracks here. I think I just put a deer out. I said, okay, all right. I think I'm in a good spot. So I just kind of stood there quiet. And about 100 yards away, as far as I could see, I saw a deer pop over the hill. And I said, okay, here we go. This is going to happen.
Yep.
It's something. Well, the next thing I saw was a rack come over the hill. And I said, here we go. So I'm kind of on this it's a real steep, sharp edge on this little gully that goes down into this little bottom. I said, I think he's going to run right along this, So I get ready and, of course, getting his gun up to your shoulder as much as you can do. And I see this doe picking her way through these little spruces. So I, watching her, and she gets 5 yards away.
Oh.
And she kind of puts the brakes on and sees me. And I could just see him behind her, but he was so tight with his head down right behind her that I couldn't gauge how big he was. I knew he was a shooter when I saw him, but I wasn't sure of the exact size. So she comes out to me, and she kind of puts the brakes on, and I must have been standing right in a runway and not realized it where I was at because she wanted to go where I was at. Mm-hmm. So I kind of just shuffled to the side a little bit, and I never saw exactly where. I joked with them. I said, I think she ran where I was standing. So she comes underneath me, and that buck, there was a blown down spruce, and he turned off of her, and he came over top of it, and he jumped over and landed at 8 yards.
Oh, no way.
So here I am, 8 yards.
And
with
if
this.
you could all see the buck he's talking about, I mean, this thing's a rack.
Yeah. So he was nice and wide, came out. It was not one of the nicest bucks I've killed. So he comes over and lands.
And just a little side note, you've killed a lot of nice bucks. We've been looking at your face and we're like, this guy's killed a lot of nice bucks.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, I've been blessed, that's for sure. Lucky a lot of times. But so he lands, and so I go to draw up on him. Well, this
Scope's
year,
on high power.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So this year,
the amount of times you hear that from people.
Yeah, and it was like one of those things where, but I'd put, I run a Leupold VXR with the red dot in it, and I put the Leupold scope caps on it this past season because all the time, like I can't shoot open sights great, and I feel like I've killed some deer where I don't know if I could have made the shot with open sights,
especially in the Adirondacks.
Yeah, that's the thing is like I feel like the distance I'm shooting, I wouldn't be comfortable with it enough, and I'm not getting those super. Well, of course that one. I wish I had open sights that day.
We say it all the time. It's like every time that like something like that happens, you wish you had the other. Like, you wish you had the peep sight for that. But then you would be hunting, and that buck would have been, if you didn't have it, he would have been 150 yards away running through
exactly.
the
And that's where I was
standing there, and you would have done nothing about it.
Exactly. Where I was at, I could see over onto one side to the right where I thought I might see a deer come, and it was probably 125 yard shot. So, it's tough to find that gauge. They work a lot better on low power, the scopes.
Yeah, they definitely do.
So my initial reaction is I pull the gun up to shoot him, and I can't see through the scope. It was so high powered, and at this point he's still moving. So I would say at this point he's probably 5 yard shot.
Does he know you're there?
I think he knew I was there, but he was so entranced with that doe. So and this is all, telling this story, it seems like a long time. This is all the matter of just
2 seconds.
Exactly. So I have the gun pulled up, safety off, ready to shoot, looking down, can't see through the scope, and instantly in my head. And I'd been worried about it with the scope cap, so I kept flipping them down when I was in those spruces because it was so thick, and I was scared I was going to get stuff packed in there, scratch lenses. It was that bad. At points, I was just tucking my gun over and pushing through.
Yep.
So first thought, those scope caps are down. How did you do this? You knew this was a problem with it, So all in the matter of a second, I roll the gun over, scope caps are open. As I'm standing the gun back up, I see the 9 crank to the top, and I said, oh, no, I left it on 9 power. Well, at this point, the buck sees me. Gun's still shouldered, but I'm looking at it, kind of rolling it, trying to figure out why I can't see him.
In full panic mode.
Yeah, full panic mode, knowing that.
Don't let him get away.
He turns and he takes a 90 and jumps off this bank. So now he's bounding at 5 yards, 200-pound buck, bounding in front of you. So I wheel around to try and get a shot at him because I know I've only got seconds now and he's gone. And if he gets... So he lands, and as he takes another bound, I just down the side of the barrel. I hit him in the back of the neck, and the taxidermist told me he found it in his eyeball. So I knew I wasn't going to get a...
Wait, you didn't...
You looked down your barrel.
I turned the gun over and looked down the barrel, but he's only 8 yards at this point. So he's diving into this gut, and I looked down the barrel, shot, and he piled right up. So instant, but... The knowing is you don't get a shot on him right now. I'm never going to hit him running out through all that. And especially on 9 power, I didn't have time to turn the scope down. So I said to myself, you've got one chance at this and do it while it's close because your chances are a lot higher. So down the barrel, click one off, get him, piles him up while another 8-pointer was behind him, probably 12, 14-inch wide 8-pointer, comes barreling, never even saw this deer, comes barreling down over the hill, jumps over his body now laying in the bottom of this gully and goes taking off out the other direction.
Wow, what a story. That's awesome.
So when I shot him, it must have broke his neck, obviously.
Right.
So he immediately just head over tea kettle. So it flipped him up. So I thought he was good, and it's so hard. You're not counting points. You're just shooting.
When you see bone in the mountains, you're just that's a good one. And I'm shooting it.
Yeah, exactly. So I get down to him and he's a stud. So my buddy's on the radio. How big is he? Did you get him? Which way's he going? Just trying the immediate reactions. And I said, no, I got him, guys. He's up here. So so we all kind of grouped up at that point, and I had him, and we took a ton of pictures with him, and It was awesome. It was great.
Awesome.
So I was hoping the other buck would, because my brother-in-law was coming up that same ridge just down in a load. I was hoping he'd hook back down there and maybe get a crack at him. But
so you guys found a pretty good area then.
Yeah. So we said, I guess we'll have to come back here next year.
Do you think those bucks were following that doe, or do you think they got bumped?
They were definitely bumped. So I think he bumped them down the hill. I think that they were hanging with that doe, whether it was just kind of a early. She was a decent sized doe too, from seeing her, not really focusing on her a lot.
Right.
So I wouldn't say it was a yearling or anything. She would, but she may have been starting to go into the cycle already. Who knows? So and it was so, with the weather last year, it was so hard to tell
what was going on.
How was it walking up on him?
Oh, so I walked down to him and he's piled up on top of, right over top of his headgear. You can't tell what he is. So I pull him out of the mud and just, so immediately I thought it was a wide 10 I had on camera. I was like, man, we got a picture of him. We killed him, but he ended up being an 11 and was almost a mainframe 12. He had snapped off the one side. He was almost a mainframe 12. So
did you get him scored?
We scored him at the fire that night. I always carry a little roll-up tape in my pack just for fun. And my buddy scored a lot of them, and he scored them at 135. So
that definitely
beauty. And he was a short time buck,
short time buck. Yep. But he had some really cool. The tines kind of splayed out on the top a little bit, and just a unique buck.
What was his inside?
19 and a half inside.
Yeah.
So, yep.
Oh my gosh, what a beauty!
And that's
buck.
the biggest one you shot in the Adirondacks, you said?
No, I killed one 4 years ago. That was 142 inches.
Let's hear it.
Yeah.
Let's hear it. I want to hear it.
One more thing on this buck. How was he when you put your hands on him and pulled on him a little bit when he had his guts in him? Was he pretty heavy deer?
Yeah, and that's, so going back to that, as far as not having a scale, just when you started trying to move this deer, he just moved different. Like when you're trying to pull on him, we've killed a lot of them 180, 190 pounds. This deer just had a different feel to him. And his chest and neck area were, and this is early in the year too.
Yeah.
And plus, I felt like this year with the heat, they didn't run as much. They weren't moving as much.
Sure.
I don't think they could.
Yeah.
I mean,
and for everybody listening, I understand that a 200-pound buck is a gutted buck, but I just want to know what he felt like live weight, to pick up on that. Because everybody picks up the deer and kind of moves them to get pictures and stuff, and he just must have felt like
I picked mine up and almost threw it off the side of the mountain.
Yeah, we could have just carried deers on our shoulders.
120 pounds.
Oh, nice. Yeah, but that's what's weird is sometimes, they grow some crazy headgear and they're not a super huge body.
Your buck, honestly, though, when you really look at where we were, though, in a lot of ways, I don't think they have awesome nutrition in there.
No.
It's actually, I feel like in a lot of places that we've hunted in the Adirondacks is very sprucey, fir, hemlock, but this actually has a lot of pine in it. And this is like southeastern Adirondacks.
Yeah, not a lot of oaks.
Yeah, there's no oak, so I just don't think he had good nutrition. It sounds like he's hunting some really healthy buck country.
we have quite a few ridges that have got a lot of oak on them. So when we get a good acorn crop, we get some of it. But when we don't, it's tough because those deer are used to that food source, and but nature always takes care of itself, so they always find a way to survive it.
Like you were saying, you guys kind of started conjugating down towards the swamps. Like that's
right.
Compared to like New Hampshire and Maine and stuff, when there's, no mast crop, they have all the cuts to go feed
right.
in. And the Adirondacks, the cuts are the swamps, basically.
Exactly.
That's all they have. That's where the green growth comes from. So,
and this is a state chunk you're on, right?
Yes, this is all state. Yep.
Approximately how big is it?
So from road to road, it would be over 20 miles.
Yeah.
So
You're in a
how
big piece.
So it's you can access it different ways, obviously,
of course,
but there's that central hub that's tough to get to, and that's where we were trying to get to.
And what was we didn't get to touch on it earlier, but I love what you said about how you're already 4.5 miles in. It's good hunting wherever you go right out of camp.
Right.
But the nice part is 3.5 miles out of camp, 4.5 out of camp is now 8 to 9 deep.
And
that's what the real beauty of it is.
Right.
And then especially if you can get good
when
snow.
you stumble into a good area that far back, you're like, oh baby,
those deer are just untouched.
Is it because you guys aren't getting touched here.
Right. So and that's what. So where I killed him was just shy of 2.5 out of camp. So we at this point we're just shy of 7 miles in.
Right. Sure. That's a pretty good lug back to camp. 2.5 miles is
so we used to drag them out, and we came to the conclusion a long time ago.
That's right. You got a picture of this buck on a pack rack.
Yes.
Awesome picture. We'll have to throw it in the podcast.
Yeah. Is that okay with you?
Yeah.
Okay,
that's
cool.
Fine. Yeah.
Awesome.
We just came to we take a ton of pictures where we get them, get some really good shots of them and stuff, and we
pictures are
and
so
dude, you can't beat being there with your boys,
right?
It's just the best, and everybody loves being that guy that gets to be on the radio and be like, "Oh yeah, boys, he's a good one."
Absolutely.
Yeah. Sometimes we let out with a little war cry, not even on the radio.
He gives out the yeehaw.
Yeah, if anybody's seen my YouTube video, I look like an idiot when I shoot that buck, but I was just so happy, and I'd worked so hard to kill that buck. You saw raw emotion in that video, just me howling out in the middle of the mountains.
The emotion that hits you at that point is just so like that. It was a first time in there, first time on the hill, first time with this.
It's an accomplishment.
Yeah, and we knew we would stand a good, and we kept saying we're 4 decent hunters. We're going into we stand a good chance of getting a deer in here. We could make this happen, but then you see the weather and it's hot, and we had it was so loud that day.
Sure.
But right when I killed him, we got some pretty good gusts of wind that turned up. So I feel like that buck, and when I caught up with the other guy, when they came up after I'd killed them and stuff, they had told me they thought they bumped that buck right in the beginning of the day.
Okay.
So they had bumped a couple of tracks, and they said it seemed like it was a doe kind of meandering up the hill, and this buck was following. Well, with that slow still hunt we were doing that day, I think these deer just stayed in front of them just a little bit all throughout the day. And right at the end, we got that. It blew in. We actually got rain that night. So it blew in a little bit of a storm, and I think that wind stirred up a little bit and maybe confused them for a second. And we had ate lunch too, so that was another break of probably an hour where we kind of sat, and they were on one side of we were talking with radios, trying to kind of have we were all eating lunch together across the way, but
I've always wished that our brains could record things, because I'd love to see his firsthand view of that buck coming up over that log. I bet you that was a sight to see.
So then that night, of course, now we're going to build frame packs. We want to do the frame with the GoPro in it.
Yeah.
I forget the guy's name, Jeff Doyle.
Yeah,
I think
Jeff Doyle.
Yeah, that mount he does is incredible.
Yep.
It is so cool.
It's about as firsthand, first person
exactly.
view as you're
and
going to
like that one, I can't imagine what that scenario would have looked like, especially that close a range.
Yeah, I think the guys who like very first started doing the GoPro over the shoulder was Jeff. It was Jeff Doyle.
Yeah,
Jeff
and
Doyle.
he has a video how to build the frame and everything. So
and Isaac was probably close after him doing videos with the GoPro.
Yeah, and my dad was diagnosed with Parkinson's, I don't know, like 6 or 7 years ago, but he's been a diehard deer hunter his whole life, and he still gets out, but he has to stay in the farm country. And I know that he would love to be with us up in the big woods if he was still able to physically do that.
Right.
And that's like the one way that he could live through me a little bit with those hunts, and I could show him what it was like while I was up there. So I think eventually I'll do the same. It's just we're so new to it. Like, you're a very accomplished big woods guy. Like, we're still so new to it that it's hard for me to want to distract myself right now. Once I get a couple bucks under my belt, I do it.
Yeah, that's the other part is it becomes a distraction.
It does.
Then it's something else you're messing with, and
sometimes you can't screw your mojo up, man.
Yeah, well, that's where we've run into it a lot. And another thing that I've always is I have my grandfather's 30-30 open sights. I've always wanted to kill a deer with it, but it's tough to head up there with an open sighted 30-30.
You immediately feel different.
Well, and when you're going to tent camp, that's it. Like, you bring it, that's what you got.
Right,
You're not going back out to go get the other one.
Exactly.
No,
so
I always thought we might pack 2 guns into our tent camp. We never did that.
Yeah,
We never did that.
No way. But something that like you guys did, what we didn't do, was hunt as a group. When
that's
we were
all
up
I've
at our
thought about the whole time.
That's
he was
what I thought
talking.
about too. Is like you guys did it the right way, because what we would do basically every day would be like, all right, we're all just splitting off and going different directions. And we ran in deer. He got a shot at a nice buck, and I almost killed one up there too. But I just think, like, especially way back there, and you guys get on those ridges together and just start kicking up deer, and you're bound to kill.
He probably
something.
doesn't kill that buck if he is still hunting alone. You probably don't ever kill that buck.
So the guy that jumped it, he told me later on, he said, I thought I saw it. He said he saw the doe come through. His name's Mason, a good buddy of mine, but the doe came through, and he said, I thought it was a buck, but he said, I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
Said I needed one more bound. If I had one more bound, I probably would have been able to tell and get a shot at it. And so he immediately was like, I knew you were up in that saddle. So he just gave me a quick cue and was like, I think I put something out. Just be ready up there, you know. And it was weird because the time from him calling on the radio till shot wasn't long. But those deer cover ground, you know.
Yeah, and Hal always talks about that ebb and flow of your hunt throughout the day. He's typically talking about on that track, like, I'm going to get him, I'm not going to get him.
Right.
And just, in that hunt, there was a period of time where it felt like you were completely out of the game. You're wading through all this spruce, and then, 15 minutes later, you're standing over a monster 11.
Your entire season turns around like that. Just like his buck this year, he was like, he was dragging. He's like, I haven't killed a buck. And him and I had talked the night before he killed his buck, and he's like, just got to keep going, just got to do it. And the next day he goes out, and his whole entire season changes. Shoots a real nice buck.
We didn't hunt out of camp this year, so we're driving at bare minimum an hour to anywhere we're hunting. So you're driving an hour every day that you're off, and then you're huffing at 8-9 miles a day just to drive an hour back home. Get up to it all over again.
Yeah,
it's a grind. I mean, man, it's a grind.
Tax on you,
so when you finally get to pull that trigger, oh my God, it feels so good.
Especially up like doing the tent thing, like that drags
on. It's a lot of work.
Our tent was 3 miles, 3.5 miles.
It was probably
up
like
in
3
there.
right on the money.
And
we would foot trail it almost all the way in and then break off.
Every time, I don't know how much you guys were carrying, but I mean, every time we're going up there, I had 30, 40 pounds on my back at least. Yep. So by the end of the week or the weekend, however long we're up there, you're like, I am ready to go sleep in my own bed for like a day or two.
Yeah, exactly.
And what you forget too is that you fail to realize at the time is when you first set up camp, you're like, well, that wasn't bad. We packed that in a day. But every time you go up into camp after that, you're bringing a little bit more. And then at the end of the year, you like have a camp full of stuff. And you're like, this is going to be 3 or 4 trips out of here now.
Yeah. So I guess now we're on a topic before we get to the other buck story. What was like, so like this year, first year doing the tent camp, what is something that you think you would probably do differently the next year, if there's anything, or do you think you guys did it pretty good this year?
Yeah, there's definitely things that we would change. One, we need a stove, and we went no stove.
That's cold.
Yeah, we had warm weather, so we had that first day when. The first day we were hunting in T-shirts and all sweating. I mean, we were soaked in sweat, so that was tough too. That presented another side of being wet. That's not
and once you're wet up there,
exactly.
You're wet the entire time you're up there.
We had said we chose early in November, just because we figured our chances of getting dumped on with snow would be low. So we weren't going to be soaked from that side of it. And you weren't going to face that crate, be back in there and get a foot of snow on top of you and have to deal with that and worry about it collapsing the tent and stuff. So we bought a cheaper tent. We're like, yeah, we'll tough it out. It'll be all right.
We're mad.
At one point, we had our sleeping bags turned around backwards with the hoods over our head, full hunting gear, trying to stay warm.
Yeah.
Because it progressively got colder as we were there that week. A cold front rolled in, and the last night it was down in the teens. And like it wasn't. We were okay, but it was tough.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to do that more in a couple nights.
I mean, we had a stove, and
Yeah.
when that thing would go out in the morning, we were like,
right.
who the hell's getting up to go put some wood in
Right.
that for us, because it got cold in there. It got
And
cold.
honestly, it sounds all well and good, but you really have to commit to the proper setup with your tent, the proper setup with your stove, because otherwise it just don't work in those very uninsulated tents. And if you're burning pretty crappy wood, it's just burping smoke back in, and it never really vents out of the tent. It can
Exactly.
turn into a mess.
Yeah,
in there.
I would
That's
say,
what
I would say
happened
the
to
biggest
us.
problem for us when we did it was not having wood prepped. We were
Right.
like, oh, we're just going to go up there and we'll just cut wood and we'll just throw it in there. Well,
Yeah.
we're throwing in wet wood into
Right.
this tiny little stove, and we have this tiny little pipe going up out of the tent. Well, it ends up getting just absolutely packed full of creosote.
Yeah.
And there's just smoke coming in the tent. So if anyone's listening and is going to do that, go up and do wood ahead of time and get it
keep it
dried
dry.
and keep
Yeah.
it dry.
So that site we
And
found.
don't cut live trees.
No
Cut
live
live-
trees.
Right. No
live
live
trees.
trees. Yep. Well, that's what you're always. Oh, we'll find dead trees. That's easy. Well, that's
Not
all.
really.
Yeah, that's easier said than done.
Yeah.
Maybe around your house where it's not. But then the other problem is you go up there to cut the wood that day, and you're just looking at the hills, ready to get up on the hills,
Yep.
and your mind's not in
Oh, yeah,
tent prep
sure.
at that point.
And a lot of that wood's dead and it's punky inside.
Exactly. Yeah.
and-
Yeah, there's so much more that goes into it than like we expected. We're like, we're gonna go up there, hunt out of this tent camp, like
Shoot a whole pile of bucks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we already had the buck pole hung up and stuff that we are gonna hang our
Yeah.
bucks off of that we never shot. And but you go up there every day, and it's like you gotta get the wood ready, you gotta have food ready, you gotta get the sleeping area all ready, you gotta
Right.
keep everything dry.
And you know how a bunch of dudes are, but by like the third day in camp, it's a wreck.
It's a wreck.
There's just stuff
Yeah.
everywhere.
There's stuff everywhere.
What'd you do for food?
We did peak meals, the freeze dried
Those
meals.
are always
Yep.
easy.
It was the lightest, easiest option. We did bring in some regular food for ourselves or whatever. But we just said like the peak is light. You have water there, easy to boil. Like we tried to keep it simple as far as that goes. You know,
Sure.
so
Yeah. Sure.
and just to keep weight off. That's
Yeah.
that's where the challenge is. That's a fine line between weight, and we didn't have a deer cart or anything. Everything was on frame pack, so
right.
you
Yeah.
got a lot of stuff to carry for, and it's
Oh,
just
yeah.
for a couple days, But it was
How
it
long
was,
were you going up there for at a rip?
3 days. is
3
what we
days.
did,
About the
yeah.
same
Yeah.
Yeah,
price.
it's about
Yeah.
the same for us.
Yeah. Yeah, we figured much more than that, and it would be you start getting into what's your quality of hunting at that point, and are you even getting that hunting it well at that
Definitely.
point?
Yeah, no.
Definitely.
Do you think that when you guys do it again, you're gonna still go back as far as you did, or do you think you're gonna?
That was that's been a debate we've had quite a bit. I think so. I think we have to,
Yeah.
know. So with killing the deer out of there, and that was one thing we didn't know when we went in. We were trying to come up with a camp name,
Yeah.
obviously. So
Right.
you got to
Yeah.
name the camp,
Yeah.
Right.
And we finally said, you know what, something will happen this week. And we'll get our name. It'll give it its own. So we named it 9 Power off the scope. So
Oh, I love
That's
that.
awesome.
That's perfect.
That's awesome.
we knew that there'd be somebody's going to fall in a creek. Somebody's going to do something. You're going to get that
Right.
name that comes to
Right.
you. So it provided. So
That's
You know what? Those hikes got real old kind of after a while because it was so deep, and especially on if we went in a lot on Thursday nights to hunt Friday, Saturday, Sundays. But that Sunday afternoon hike out is, you're going back, getting ready to go back to work. And It's a
Right,
long hike
yeah.
out. But now that we haven't done it, we didn't do it last year. Now I miss our
Oh, I miss
10
it so
o'clock
much.
hikes in on a Thursday night to go 3 miles out through the dark, and it's nothing but headlamps and us
Right.
just catching back up with each other.
Yeah,
I miss
exactly.
that now.
Well, we actually just talked about that. We weren't gonna do a tent this year. I think we're gonna throw it up somewhere.
yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
It's kind of
We'll
we
see.
like the
We'll
idea,
see.
whether or not we do it.
yeah. So we had kind of figured we would do 1 or 2 good trips in with the tent. Like we weren't going to hunt out of it every single week.
Okay,
we just
same,
knew that
same, yeah.
it wasn't realistic for us. And we have a group of guys that we hunt with a lot on Saturdays. And they were kind of the ones that got me going into the hunting at a young age. So I always try to pay it back to them and still party hunt with them. It's a different kind of hunt, you know,
Right.
but a lot of good time. Same thing. Like, there's nothing better than being
You
in
guys
the
have
woods.
had a lot of success doing it, too. I
Exactly,
mean, looking
yeah.
at your pictures, you guys have shot a
Yeah,
ton of
yep.
nice bucks doing
We all
it.
know the hills really well, and they're a little bit older, some of them, and they can't get around as deep as what the rest of us can, and climbing over the mountains, like you were saying, you know, it's just, you get to a point where it gets tough. It's not an easy task.
It's
yeah.
not, and it's a
You
full
don't get
blown.
younger.
No, exactly.
And it's a full blown commitment. The wives are home for 3 days by themselves, and for some of us, it means you're disconnected from work, and some of us can't be that disconnected from work at all times because for me, sometimes I have to go in if I'm called. Like there is no being gone for 3 days with no cell phone contact to anybody.
Right.
So, that happens too. I know we're going to get to this buck story because there's a couple more I want to get to, but we're kind of on a roll right now. And I just wanted to ask you. So you said that you knew you weren't going to always hunt out of tent camp. We felt the same because we'll bomb around to a lot of different spots that we want to hunt. You guys do that too. You hunt out of a lot of trailheads and stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We're hunting quite a few different trailheads and that sometimes we'll just get a weird notion like, hey, we haven't been to this spot in a while. Let's go hunt it. You know, let's go see what's over there. We hunt one spot for a little bit, and if we have a couple of misses or, we feel like you turn the woods up a little bit. You're disturbing it week after week, and
it's always good to go get on some fresh ground.
Exactly.
And even sometimes stuff you've never even seen before.
Yeah. And then we've noticed too, we've had quite an influx of new people coming into areas too. So one area you might see quite a bit of traffic in it. It's like, let's let it quiet down for a couple weeks and go hunt this. So I just love the variation. I love chasing different spots and going to different spots and up over new hills and the other guys are the same way. They love to, anything new is good for us. So.
Yeah. I always, we've talked about it a lot as of recently, like kind of condensing our areas and stuff. And I'm kind of hell bent on doing that, but at the same time, I'm just like, I want to go see everything. Like, I want to go see what this is way up north, and I want to go see what this is out west. So it is so hard because there's so much ground.
Yeah, it's kind of silly because we really have narrowed down some spots that we know are very productive areas, but you'd think we would just stick there and hunt them, but we constantly feel like there's just, you never know what else is out there.
Right.
There's just so many options.
I mean, where I shot my buck last year, we'd only hunted twice. I mean, I had only hunted twice, and the second time I go in there, I kill a buck. Yeah. So, you never know.
So then that almost feeds that, though, a little bit, because now it's like, hey, we can do this.
That.
Yeah.
Right. But then, I don't know, is it more beneficial to go hunt an area that you know like the back of your hand and where these bucks are probably going to be?
When we're hunting on a weekend, we have a pretty good group of us that go in and hunt it together, and we just have certain hills we know where the deer are going to come off them, So, and a lot of times that's for the guys in our group, just to get the guys in our group a chance at a buck.
Yeah.
That when they were younger used to do it. I feel like the drive used to putting on deer drives used to be the thing, and especially in the area I'm at. Like,
it's still big in the Adirondacks.
Right,
I mean, throughout the Adirondacks.
But then once you start, what got me really into individual hunting and kind of still hunting is I went to Joe DeNitto tracking seminar, and it was just an absolute. It totally changed the way you looked at the woods and how to hunt it in that one-on-one. And then once you get one-on-one, it just changes things.
Yeah. So you said you're new to the tracking, right?
Yeah. So I when I was 16 years old, my father is a crazy hard worker, puts tons of hours in. Always worked for a company. So he didn't really get to do a lot of hunting. He was always out of town working, trying to provide or whatever. So he about 10 years ago went self-employed. And then when I graduated high school, he brought me on with him. So it gave me the opportunity now to have that availability to go. But he never got into the big woods. He just never had the time for it. It's in my blood, I guess, from my grandfather and great-grandfather. They were avid, backwood. They didn't hunt big woods per se, as in like big state woods. They had their own property that butted up to
still
timber. And I still hunt the same woods that they do.
Yep.
And it's just... It's something about being in those woods and still hunting them, and that's what they were always still hunters. They always still hunted with intent. Yeah. So they would always send one out around the end of a big fly and the other one would go hunt the ridge off. Right. So for me, the still hunting was always kind of like, you have to sneak, you got to be a sneaker. I want to sneak around. And then I went to the tracking seminars and kind of saw that side of it. And it just
opened up new horizons.
Yeah, it's tough. It's hard.
It is very hard.
And
the people who are great at it make it seem very
exactly,
easy. And it's not easy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Joe Janitto, just go park along 30 up north somewheres and head in the woods and guys shoot, but he's killed some gorgeous bucks. And
go off the highway and then he goes into the bedroom and you start sneaking, you shoot him in his bed. And Joe really is that good, but for the rest of us, it's like, am I even on the highway?
Yeah,
is this am I on a buck track or a doe track? I don't know.
Is this the bedroom? Oh, there's the jump bed. Oh,
sure.
There you go.
I think what sets Joe apart from a lot of, I think what makes him so successful is he is so confident when he starts to do his sneak that buck is there.
Yeah.
And it's just so hard to commit to that, to sneaking when you don't know if the buck is actually there or not. Right, and you feel like you're wasting time, then you start picking it up, you bump the buck.
Right.
That's what sets him apart. Is he sneaks, knows he's going to kill that buck, and it ain't an hour or two later he shoots him.
And he gets them every year.
Yeah, it's nuts. What always got me with in the seminars, he always said 3 days a year. I need 3 days a year, and I can make it happen. It's just trying to wrap your mind around that is
that's what
crazy.
Most of the guys who kill them year in and year out tracking. That's what they say though. They need 2 good days. 2-3 good days.
It's crazy.
And they're like, I'm gonna kill one today. Our buddy Adam Arquette, he's like, we get snow in this area, I'm gonna go kill him. He'll go kill a buck.
Yeah, they're just good at it. So, how many bucks have you shot on the track?
So I think I'm up to 5 now on the track. So a couple of smaller ones. I killed a 6 with no brows. That was small. But I have killed a few on the track. Some of them maybe came into the track, weren't the one I was exactly tracking. It was at, but still a lot of it's hard to tell. I never finished tracking it out to see if it was the same.
We
deer.
just talked about that recently. You never go finish the track. You just go to your buck.
He was coming back, but I felt like it was the same deer. So
it probably was.
Yeah, exactly. It's hard to tell, but at that point, I'm going to the deer, not following the track anymore. So
right.
But
I want to show you a picture real quick from your social media, and I just want you to kind of tell us about that deer because I'm assuming you killed. Did you kill this buck on a track?
Yes.
Okay, so tell us about that deer.
That's one.
Oh, that's a hammer.
So that's the one I was 100. That's my best buck, 142 inches.
Okay,
142 and an 1/8. So
he's a good one. We'll have to put him on social media too.
With that nice dark chocolate rack on him.
He had to be almost 20 inside.
Yeah. He was same thing. I think 19 3/4 inside.
Okay.
Yep. So that deer, I killed him on a Sunday afternoon.
2019.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you probably. I don't even know what the year.
You said 4 years ago.
I think that's what it was.
Roughly.
I don't know exactly.
Okay.
So it was a Sunday afternoon. We always do a family dinner on Sunday. So I was at my parents' house. We had dinner, and it was kind of like a foggy rain late in the year. Kind of nasty out. It was a Sunday after Thanksgiving, and I had hunted this where I killed him at this patch of woods on Thanksgiving, and that Thanksgiving it had been crazy cold, like down in. I think it was 5 or 6 below the morning I went out. Unbelievable, tough to even bear. Couldn't get anybody else to go with me on Thanksgiving that year. So I went out by myself just around my house. I bought up to a bunch of state woods, and I have great hunting right out my back door. And that's where he had come from, was nearby there. So I go into this spot on Thanksgiving, hunted it, and I was going up this long ridge. And actually the property where I was at used to be my grandfather and great-grandfather owned it. So it was old family property. Wood company had bought it, and I had talked to the forester, had switched hands, and asked him if I could hunt it. And he said, yeah, no problem. You can, we're waiting for a new lease to come up on it, but right now it's all yours, and you have permission to hunt it. So it worked out good. It was right down the road from my house at this point. So I'd gone out, and I'm working up this ridge, and I looked up in front of me and kind of trying to track a little bit, but it was we had a wet snow, and then with that cold, it was crunchy, busting through. Man, it's like you're not going to be able to track. So I'm trying to get up on a ridge where I can maybe see down below me and pick one up. I'm going, and I'd see a flick of a deer up in front of me. So I'm watching it and sat there for a while looking at it, and finally it gets up and moves a little bit, and it's a doe. But she sees me, but she's not super spooked or anything. So I was like, oh, okay, this is Thanksgiving Day. Like, maybe there's something else there. And I see another flick. Well, it was a small 7-pointer, a little bit basket rack 7. Decent little buck. I hadn't killed a buck at this point, obviously. So
thinking about it then.
Yeah, I didn't get anything with muzzleloader that year. So I'm like, man, this is, now, you know what? I'm going to let it go. I'm going to watch it. And the way I always look at it, that's a dead deer. You would more than likely you're going to kill that deer. It was a 75-yard shot, So I watched him for a while. He played around there, and finally I I moved off or whatever, and he took off another direction. Didn't see anything else that day. So fast forward to that Sunday, my father's at the house and my sister are there. So she's starting to learn how to hunt a little bit. And trying to get into it. It's tough to get time for her, but whenever she can get in the woods, she tries to. So I said, let's go down to this. I saw that decent little 7, and he was on a hot doe in there. You know, it hasn't been that long, maybe. And I think that's the reason why he wouldn't move that day is that doe was hot, and he didn't want to leave her. You know, he just everywhere she went, he's poking right behind her. So we go down to this spot, and I told him, I said, go get up around the backside of that hill, and there's a saddle. Up to the saddle. Go get up in that saddle, and I'll kind of bring it up to you. And there's a little bog in there. I said, I'll come through that bog and work it up and around the end of that hill up towards where you guys are at, you know. Now, our family's killed probably 100 bucks in there previous generations and some gorgeous bucks, you know. So it's familiar territory, but I'd never personally had hunted it a lot because it had been leased and it had recently switched hands, so I was able to get permission to go into it, you know.
Cool.
So it was like kind of like a
nostalgic.
It was like, oh, this is cool, you know, this is something different. So it was super dense fog that day, and we had gotten rain over that weekend, so our crunchy snow was gone. Super wet snow, heavy, you know, and they were logging a lower part of the woods there where we were at. So there had been deer all through there, a lot of sign. So I start going out through this little bog, going to make a little push to him. Well, I get out in that bog, and there's one track in there that immediately I said,
that's a buck.
That's a buck. That's a good buck too, you know.
Yeah.
Immediately, it's like you just go right on guard. So I'm like, oh man, he's poking right. This is perfect, you know. And knowing that there's all that feed right late season, there's some hot does in there. I said,
I was just gonna ask, what was he doing? Where, like, when you saw him that track, what was his track showing you?
So he was right on the top side of where they'd cut probably a month prior to that. So there's a bunch of chopping in there and tops and stuff, and he was just poking around in tops. So at this point, I think I'm in the bedroom immediately because he's feeding at, you know, he's either feeding in there with a doe that was feeding at that time, you know, when he, it was kind of tough because it was real wet and the tracks were kind of blown out a little bit and it was dripping off the trees. So,
so they're just deteriorating by the second.
Exactly. Yeah. So I didn't know how long he'd been in there, and I was super late getting in there. You know, we didn't go in until the afternoon. So, I found his track and I just started poking through there. Well, then it turned into barnyard. I mean, just tracks everywhere. So I'm trying to figure out which one's his. And I said, you know what? I'm going to spend more time looking. I know this is a great area with a lot of deer in it right now, tons of feed. And I thought I picked up the track again where he had barnyarded with a bunch of deer for whatever reason. It looked like there maybe had been that hot doe in there running around a little bit with a younger buck. And I thought I picked the track up coming on the back side of this little bog. And the way they had marked the timber is they left these little bogs uncut. So in the uncut spots, you could see good. And then you get to the cut spots, and it's all barnyarded again where they'd been feeding. So I come through this little bog, and it kind of goes up onto a rise. I'm like, man, he's going to be laying in here. If I'm in the bedroom, this is where, if I'm a big buck, this is where I'm laying. So I kind of started poking up this little rise. And I always try to just poke my eyes above a rise and look, you know, scan it. And I poked above, and all I saw was 2 ears flick forward. And he was about probably 60 yards out in front of me. So I just see the white of his ears flick up. So I immediately pull the gun up. So I'm like chest height on this rise in front of me, and he's out in front of on this little bench out in front of me. So I pulled the gun up, and as I pulled it up, I came up his neck, and I could just see dark chocolate going up along his ears. So his
Is
ears,
he bedded or standing?
Bedded. So he's laying right in a bed, and I can see this dark chocolate, and I thought it was his beams. He had a 10-inch brow tine, and it's running right along his ear, and I just see the chocolate beam, and I said, man, that's a good buck. So I just down his neck, pow, shoot, immediately rolls over in the bed, you know, kind of like flops. So I racked another one thinking, oh, he's going to jump up and take off again.
Yeah.
And I pull up, and I'm still on him at this point, and as he rolls, I just see rack roll over, and he flops right there. So I just stood there for a second watching him. It's something I've always done.
Definitely.
You know, I see a lot
Everyone
of guys
should do it.
Yeah, I see a lot of guys take off right after him, but sometimes it just stuns them, you know?
Sure. Right. Well, I guess what I'm saying is, like, whatever your reaction is, just make sure you're able to shoot
exactly,
again.
Yeah.
That's
and
all.
a lot of guys forget to work the action, you know?
Right,
and so I see him roll over, watch him for a second, and I start working up to him. And I thought he was a good buck, knew he was decent. I didn't think he was that little one I'd seen in there, you know? So I get up to him, and I'm like, oh, my God. Like, this thing's this is a big buck, you know?
Yeah.
So same thing. He had rolled over onto his rack. So I pull his rack up out and just the emotions that hit at that point, like, first thought was, oh, I made the book. I got a book buck, you know? Just first reaction.
Yeah.
But
Sure.
as I got looking at him, I'm like, maybe not, you know? So I'm just bewildered at this point. And he's actually still alive, so he's kicking a little bit. So I ended up having to finish him off. And so now we have the radios on, and my sister starts calling on the radio. What? Was that you? It's like, yeah, that was me. What'd you get? I was like, it's a little 4-pointer. Nothing big, you know? Really? I was like, yeah. Well, why
She knows better.
Yeah, she's like, why didn't you push it to me? You know, of course, the typical questions.
Sure.
It's like, I'll come up and get you, you know, but stay ready because there's a lot of deer in here, so be ready.
Right.
And we're pretty close at this point. So I work up to them, and I bring them back down. And the reaction, getting to see their faces walking down, you know, so, and that's the only buck I've ever killed with the two of them.
Okay.
My dad and sister with me.
awesome.
So it was
man.
cool to have them there
the
for
way
it.
that played out then was great. Then on land your family had hunted
Exactly,
for years
yeah.
prior. That's
Yep.
awesome. That's awesome. So it was meant to be.
Yeah, that was it. So so I ended up, when I hit him kind of low in the neck, and it went through and broke his back, and that's what rolled him over.
Yeah.
And he just never had the power to get back up again. And
Sure.
And it was an awesome experience. So, but that buck, you ran your hand down his spine, just nothing left.
Yeah.
It was just pure backbone.
I was just gonna ask, did you throw him on a scale?
Yeah, so I weighed him out 160 pounds.
Yeah.
Like at that point, and I would say probably early season he would have been 190, maybe 200. You know,
Right.
early season, super wide chest on
Long?
him. He was fairly long.
Yeah.
Not the longest one I've ever killed, as far but
Right.
he was a big body deer,
Oh,
old
yeah.
deer.
Yeah,
Oh,
well,
yeah.
we like to ask everyone who comes on the podcast who hunts the Adirondacks a lot, like what's usually a fair weight for like what you're shooting?
Cumulatively.
Yeah, accumulatively.
I would say 160, 170 is probably our average weight.
Really?
But then we get quite a few that shoot up into the 180s, 190s, you know,
Really?
especially early season. And that's
Yeah.
the biggest thing is when you kill them.
early season. All the bucks that we've shot have not been heavy, so it's interesting.
But we're in that southern band where we have quite a bit of oak in there, and I think that makes a huge difference on it too. And
It's
then,
got to.
And then they have where they yard, they have great winter ground. So I think that's another thing that really keeps them packed on and in good shape.
Sure.
So.
And this deer had a little bit of logging, so that helps.
Right.
That helps
So
out,
they
too.
were moving into that chop, and I think he was headed into. But it was kind of because the spot where I killed him, there's tons of hunting leases and on the backside of this, so it's not that big wood state feel per se.
Yeah.
Where I live up farther from that, it's quite a bit of state woods, but you still are surrounded by it's more like a main type with roads all through it, and it's cut off and but I never heard from it, and I know a lot of the guys that hunt that no one ever really had him on camera. A guy down the road from me had him on camera after season. He came in and yarded, and they actually found his sheds down there.
No kidding.
From the year before, and he put like 4 inches on that one brow tine.
Wow.
And the only way we knew it was him is his one ear right from the base of his head right to the tip was split perfectly in two. So you could,
interesting.
in the picture, you could see it clear as day. And
it just makes your mind wander, though. Like, what is out there?
Yeah.
These bucks you hear all the time. People shoot them. They're like, we've asked everybody, everyone we know who hunts in this area, and no one's had this buck on camera.
Yeah.
Like, where's this thing living? What's he doing? Like, he's just out there in the middle of nowhere doing his
seems
thing.
like they live
and
underground
nobody
sometimes.
knows about him. It's crazy,
Yep.
especially when you guys get 4.5 miles back there.
Right,
Imagine what's running
How
around
deep
up
was
there.
that deer?
He was only 1.5 miles off the road. So
Nice.
and we were able to drive pickup truck and almost right. That was it, something different. Dragging them out and putting them in a pickup. So
I feel like you're in Maine.
Yeah, I didn't know. I was little like we could put them in there. This is okay to do right now. You know, we don't have to carry them 5 miles.
Right.
What kind of gun you carrying?
Yeah.
7600 carbine 35.
Yep. And obviously
35 Whalen.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Nice.
I got
Ram or Whalen?
what's that?
35 Ram or 35?
Whalen.
It is
Yep,
Whalen.
yep,
Okay.
Yep. I got one. It was about. Well, it was when they did that last run of them before they kind of closed up there. They did a pretty good charge of them that came out, and I was able to pick one up then. I have one in .6, 270, 308.
Wow. You got a bunch of pumps.
Yeah, I love the pumps. So
Did you leave a peep on any of them?
the 270's got a peep on it. It's
Stays in the shelf.
It's a learning curve. It's a little tough, you know. What's weird is like a 22, I can shoot open-sighted 22 all day long. For some reason, that rifle and with the peep, it's just a little bit different. But I want to get to the point where like heavy snow days where you're not getting those 125, 150-yard shots. Sure. I would start carrying it those days.
Right.
Yeah.
Because there's so many times you look through your scope and it's like, well, if I jump one now, it's going to be a challenge to get that thing in there.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. I really feel like a peep gun is a dedicated tracking gun, too, because you just don't want to still hunt with a peep gun. But, I mean, Joe certainly has said that he's pretty much 50-50 on his bolt action with a scope and his pump with a peep is shooting bucks. So, on the track, you can definitely usually get close enough.
Yeah, I'm a bolt. I haven't used a pump. I just have a bolt. I just got a new one, a little Savage Axis Compact. Threw a little 2-7 on there. But, like, then I'm like, do I get a pump, too? Because I know on those days when there's snow blowing all over the place, I'm not going to want to have that scope.
Yeah.
So I'm stuck in the
It looks
middle.
like you've shot most of your bucks with that 35?
Yeah, the 35's been most of. I've killed quite a few in my /6 too.
Okay.
30-06.
Yeah.
So same thing, 7600. And then I used to carry when I first started. It was a Model 700 bolt action Remington, the full length, the heavy as all get out. But it was a buck killer. I killed some nice deer with it.
I bet.
There was just once I went to that pump with the balance in those pumps, you know, it carries nice.
They do. They carry beautiful.
Quite a few of the guys in our group have started using the bars though. Mm-hmm. Those are sweet guns.
Yeah,
they're
they are.
nice.
They're
That's
very
another great tracking. Just
Definitely.
quick to, and there's no. I mean, those guys, the way they rattle shots off with it, it's impressive.
Yeah,
so,
they're super short too.
Yeah, exactly.
You get
That's
the right
other
ones.
thing. Yep. Yeah, same thing. They did forget what the model was on it, but they did a release on the shortened carbines with the shorter. And they were nice. So,
do you get into the bow hunting at all, or?
Yeah, so I used to bow hunt a lot more when I was younger and before I was self-employed. Now I'm trying to get jobs done heading into winter or towards fall to get more time in the gun season. But I have an uncle that lives in Pennsylvania, so we try to go down there
hunting.
and. His spot is awesome. It's the big woods of PA, state game lands, huge woods, and there's some really cool It's a lot of fun down there.
Yeah,
so,
a lot of big bucks too.
Yeah,
we've hunted in Jersey and we've dabbled into Pennsylvania.
Yeah,
and big woods and lots of big deer.
yeah, he's Western PA, so and it's cool there because you get so many. All of it's logged down there, then a lot of coal strips and stuff, so you can. A lot of access points, and for the bow hunt, it's just a lot of fun. We always meet up try to always meet up out there and do a bow hunting trip out there with him. And his kid killed a 150-inch 10-pointer this year with the bow.
Wow.
So
holy cow,
awesome.
Still hunting
nice.
too. He was in one of those.
Really?
Yeah, on snow. Like I said, you got to get up to the big woods and up in New York.
Sounds like he's in the wrong place.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
He had a lot of trail camera pictures of it and stuff, and it was really cool.
I think I saw you killed a buck out in Ohio too, right? Have you hunted quite a few different states?
So I've hunted New York, Ohio, and Pennsylvania.
Yep.
So I killed I went on a guided hunt out there to a farm, and I killed a decent 10 with a muzzleloader and an 8 2 years prior to that. So
we're headed out there this fall
to
do some bow hunt. I'm pretty excited.
That's as I want to try and do a little bit more bow hunting in other states eventually, but
just time.
It's tough, you know. In the big woods, it's something about the big woods. If you can allow your time up there versus another spot, it's hard for me to make the decision.
I mean, I'm fortunate because I get a lot of time to hunt, but like even we're going to Ohio for a week, and I'm like, I'm gonna be missing out on a pretty dang good week to be to be up in the big woods. But it's fun going and hunting different places, different experiences, and you know, you have the potential to shoot an absolute giant out there.
Yeah.
So,
how many bucks do you think you've killed in the Adirondacks?
I would say probably around 20.
Okay. Ooh. And that's a lot. Yeah. You've done really well.
I live in the Adirondacks too, so that, you know,
of course.
So that helps a lot.
Yeah, but I mean, so you grew up doing it.
Right.
Yep. How old were you when you started hunting?
So
right as legal age? Or?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. So I always used to go with my dad when I was a little kid. You know, not old enough to carry a gun or anything, but I would sit on watch with him. Well, sleep on watch with him.
And, didn't we all?
So that was, and I just always loved it. Like I always loved the deer hunting, always wanted to be in the woods with them, you know. And then one of my good friends in high school, when I was 16, invited me to go with them. He said that they hunted up in we called it up north, up into the big woods.
We say it all the time. It's,
thing.
I mean, it's the Adirondacks, but we all refer to it as I'm going hunting up north.
I still do it. Because people, of course, you say the Adirondacks, and it's, well, you live in the Adirondack. Yeah, but up farther,
right.
not here. So he told me and invited me to go with this group. And I said, yeah, like, what do I do? And he's like, well, they usually do drives, and you just have to have a radio. So I had a 2-way radio and my dad's bolt action 700. It wasn't even my gun. And I met up with them, and they said, we're going to go up and do this, do drives, and we'll put you on watch, and you'll be between guys. At this point, never been in an area bigger than a couple 100-acre plot of woods, always a road. You could hear traffic.
Sure.
So they take me up with them. We hike back in this foot trail. We park at this trailhead and hike back this foot trail, get back in there. Felt like forever. The most I'd ever walked is into a 100-acre plot.
Right.
So they take us up in there and split up the watchers and the drivers, and you're gonna go with the watch line, and they'll set you out. So I go out and we get set up on this spot, and they left me on. Yet to this day, we joke about it. I always said it was the worst watch I've ever been put on. Straight ledge up into this hemlock side hill, like there's an old migratory runway there. And,
thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah. So at this point, I'm like, okay, this looks like a good spot. Of course, the typical mindset of what you always think, like, I'm going to go sit on a big oak ridge where I can see all directions. And, I've got about 50 yards of visibility in each direction. And one of them straight up, joking to myself, going to need a parachute for the deer to get off there.
Yeah.
So they set up the watch line, leave me with a radio. There I sat. Well, something happened. One of the other guys ended up shooting a deer in the beginning. I never heard the shot. Didn't have a radio. They never told me the radio didn't work. So here I am. I'm like, man, these guys never talk. They don't say anything all day. So I'm sitting on this watch, can't hear anybody talking, can't hear what's going on. And 3 hours rolls by, and I'm like, maybe they forgot me. All these things start rolling through your head. 16 years old, never been in the woods, have a decent idea how to get out, but to actually do it probably wouldn't have worked out too well.
Yeah.
And so I just sat it out. I was like, eventually somebody will come back for me, So watching this runway, I'm like, there's no way I'm going to ever kill anything. And 3 hours in, sure enough, like 100-inch 8-pointer, bounds down the hill, lands at 20 yards away up on the hill, shoot it, thing comes sliding down the hill after I shoot it, it literally dies in my lap at 10 yards after shooting it at 20 yards, So I go up to it, and now what? I haven't seen anybody all day. Don't know where I'm at.
Don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, like I've never even gutted a deer at this point in my life, Seen a couple killed. That's about it, with my father through the years and stuff. But just know I just shot an 8-point buck, So this is awesome. This is great. Well, they end up finally coming out to me, and I told them, I was like, I thought I was left for dead. I thought you guys had brought me in here, forgot about me, moved on,
Sure.
They said, well, we kept calling to you on the radio, and you didn't answer. Well, the radio, they gave me a mic with it, and the mic didn't work, and I didn't know it. So the whole time I'm just radio silent
talking
over
to nobody.
Yeah.
But killed a deer first time ever with them,
and then just hooked.
That was it. I mean, it just was, from then on, that's all I wanted to do,
Mm-hmm.
And then another thing, as far as the tracking too, that kind of years later with them, a couple years later, I went a couple years, didn't see anything after that. Of course, more like what it's like hunting the Adirondacks than first time out getting one. I went a 4-year stretch where I killed a buck on opening day. So
wow.
Every year,
4 years in a row, killed a buck on opening day with this group of guys. So
really?
I'm going out opening day, killing a buck on opening day.
They're probably, we don't want to bring this guy in.
Yeah, well, that's what the joke started. You better come back next year. You're not done here,
Yeah.
But it made it tough because I kind of lost some years, though, where it's awesome to kill one opening day, but at the same time, it's like shooting a buck on the first day of a hunt. Like,
yeah, you missed out on a lot of experience.
Yeah, so like I missed a lot of winter. Didn't get to do much tracking, more snow on the ground type of hunting, and it's awesome because you're killing a deer and you have the deer, but then it's almost like then they start getting theirs throughout the year and it's like, oh man, like I'm going to start holding out, and I was killing some like 100-inch 8-pointers and,
which is a shooter.
Exactly. And I yet to this day still shoot them,
Absolutely.
But there, at some point it starts clicking. Maybe I got to let some of these go.
Right.
I got to start seeing what else is out there.
some
Give
of the bigger
myself
ones.
the season, and that as time's gone on, you know, especially when you're young, like you just want to get a buck. Like you got to get a buck. And even to this day, like you just love getting a buck, you know? But like I was saying earlier, it's almost some of those times it's like you're killing those deer. If you're seeing them that close and, you know, take that mental snapshot of it, know what that deer looked like, you got that deer.
Sure.
Right.
Let it go. Let it become what it can be, you know?
Sure.
And there's something.
That's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah, there's something about when you watch like 100-inch, whatever, Adirondack buck run away from you and know that you had it. It's the greatest. It's almost better than killing one sometimes.
Sure.
Right.
Like I did it. He got the pass this
He can
time.
live to see another day, and maybe I'll see him.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure we have seen some of them throughout the years.
Probably.
And it's just fun. So
I think that's a great point, man, because it's not always about, you know, there's a lot of people in this world that don't understand that hunters aren't just like these bloodthirsty savages. You know, like a lot of times it is just about the experience and like sharing that moment with the deer. And then he goes his way and you go yours, and it was still awesome.
Yeah.
You know, it's not always about killing them.
Yeah,
but then when they have a giant rack of horns, you just start throwing lead.
You just start dumping on them.
Yeah, it's war at that point.
Down here. What is that? Hour and 14, I think.
All right, well, I got one more buck story for him. I got another picture. I was going through screenshot and some of your better bucks, and I just want to take a look what I have here.
Also, just throw it in here. The video is going to be trash for this podcast.
Oh, the video's no good.
I forgot to empty that card.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Well, here, this looks like a cool buck. And I'm not sure if have we talked about him yet?
No.
No. Okay. So, and that looks like a different rifle. Which rifle's that?
Yeah, well, there's a story with the rifle on that one.
That's a really nice heavy buck.
Dandy.
What is he, a 10-pointer as well?
Yeah, he was a 10-pointer, super long brows.
Look at the head on that buck.
Look at the brows on him.
Yeah,
so
he's got a nice big...
I killed him.
Early, it looks like.
No, he was not super early.
Okay.
I think it was...
I don't have any date.
I think it was Thanksgiving week I killed him.
Okay, there's still some yellow foliage in the background,
yeah,
but that might
I think
be,
it was Thanksgiving
might
week.
be the beaches that didn't totally turn over yet.
Well, and he was low at that point, and down near a river at that point. So I'd been to Pennsylvania bow hunting. So I had my cousins, and we made a deal. I was going to go down and bow hunt with them, and then they were going to come up, and we were going to hunt up the big woods. Yeah. And that's one thing, like, I love just as much seeing somebody else kill a buck. And I love bringing 100%. People and letting them experience it. And it's something I've always said, if you have to explain why it's fun, it's not the right person for the woods.
That is a great way of putting it.
That is a great way of putting it.
And most of the time when it's weird. Most of the time when people come to it, they just go nuts for it, though. And you're not seeing a lot of deer.
Natural. Like
you know, or there's some that, I'm never hunting that again. That was horrible, you know. So I brought my cousins up. The first morning, my one cousin shot a nice 8-pointer, like 100-inch 8-pointer, maybe 90-inch 8-pointer, but came out nice, perfect, picture perfect. Oak Ridge comes out but following a doe down off the hill, makes a perfect shot on it, like just set the tone for the week. So it was awesome, you know. Right off the rip, we got one, and so then it just amps you up. You've got the whole week, and they absolutely loved it. I didn't have to explain why it was fun. I didn't have to tell them what was fun about it.
Just got it.
They just got it. Instant. And they're coming from Pennsylvania, where you can sit in a tree stand and see 25 deer at night, you know. And they all saw a buck that week. By the end of the week, they'd all seen a buck or a glimpse of one. Not necessarily huge bucks, but you know, something.
In the Adirondacks.
And they were actually selective too. You know, they. My one cousin almost didn't shoot the 8-pointer. I was like, no, like you have to shoot that one. Like that's not you don't let that one go. That's a must shoot in this situation.
You might not see that the rest of the season, let alone the week you're here.
Yeah. So they were hunting with me that week, and it got towards the end of the week, and we had done I was kind of doing a lot of send them up like up through ridges or whatever and get up on the top of hills and kind of trying to do still hunts to them because they weren't super familiar with the territory and they were used to, and actually they all turned out to be, they did great in the woods and no problem getting around the woods. So they ended up, by the end, we were all still hunting and doing what we normally do, you know, still hunting with purpose. If you get in the saddle, if you're up there or up on that side of the hill, whatever. So we were hunting like that, and it was the last day they were with us. Late afternoon, we're coming out the foot trail, heading out for it was kind of early to quit, but we'd kind of done what we wanted to that day, and we were heading out. Well, we got down a little bit, and I said, there's this one side hill that kind of runs along this river over here, and like we've seen a lot of bucks through it in the years. It's steep and it's hard to hunt, a little challenging. It's like, let's go hunt that,
Coming down over top of it?
Yeah, so we were coming down the foot trail. I said, why don't you guys go out and get around this and heading towards our parking area. I said, you guys go out and get along this and get kind of down towards that river, and the other two of us would just go and still hunt it back across to you, and kind of push it, a soft push up to you quick here. So they went out and went down and broke down over towards the river, and we went out the other direction to get around it. Well, we get out there, and my one cousin, I could hear him on the radio, and he's like, I think I see it barely. It was tough. I don't know if it was just that far enough distance.
Yep.
And I thought I saw a deer. I couldn't tell what it was. I think it might have been a buck. Not sure. It's like, are you in a good spot? Are you ready though? Sat down. He's like, yeah, I'm good. I was like, all right, we're just going to bring it to you. And if he's in there, we'll see him, or maybe he's still there with you, and just, you didn't scare him. So we start going across this side ridge to him, and I can see the river down below me. I'm pretty close to it there. And it's just all big oak trees. And this year it was loaded with acorns. And I started finding immediate buck sign. And we hadn't been in there much that year at all. Yeah. It would have been left alone. Just one of those overlooked spots, because you got to get farther back. Got to get farther back.
Right,
they're not in there. You got to go farther.
Yeah.
So I'm working along there, and I crossed a little creek that feeds down into this river, and I start up the bank, and I look to my right, and I see a deer dart out on this like, it's almost like a little, not peninsula, but like it's where glaciers, I guess, had carved out that bank at some point, and this deer pokes out on it, and it's a doe. It's like, man, it's weird. She's just kind of standing there, not really moving much, and she kept looking over her back, and I'm like, yeah I know what this is. Yeah. So I spin and get ready, and I'm watching, and he stepped up right behind her, and immediately, no scope, C-rack, shooter, got to shoot this one. So I pull up, click safety off, pow, shoot. Watching, and he's still standing there. Didn't move it, but he's right on the edge of that river. So I don't know if it was so loud, the river, he couldn't tell where the shot came from, didn't hear the shot, not sure.
And your heart sunk down into your feet.
Yeah, so I'm like, how did I miss that deer? Like, he's standing still. And I actually...
How far is he?
He probably was 80, 90 yards, not a far, I mean, a very makeable. And I even had a beach whip that I'd found there when I saw the doe. If I can, a lot of times I'll throw up against a beach whip. I'm not too proud to say that. A little stability sometimes is nice.
Oh my gosh,
absolutely. I'm doing the same thing.
So I shot once, and he's standing there, and I'm like, I don't know how I missed it, but I got it. So I rack another one, take aim, shoot again, still standing there. I'm like, what? I can't figure it. So I pump one more time, and at this point, I don't know if he heard the pump or what, but he takes off, and I lead him and shoot, and that was it. I didn't see him again. I was like, I just blew it. Like, that's a gorgeous buck. I don't understand how that happened, what happened. So I go down to where I'd seen him, and it's along this river, and it's all like that thick alder brush. You can't see through it. And it's all red, all of it's. So I'm looking for blood and like trying to find any sort of sign or hair or whatever. And so at this point, the other guys were kind of finishing out the hunt. I said, I'm going to go look for this deer, and it's getting towards dark at this point. I said, you guys are just probably better to finish it and then come out, and I'll meet you out at the trucks or whatever. So I break down over the bank, and I get down there, and I'm looking. And I just happen to look up, and I see him bound up out of that brush out in front of me, and he was only 50 yards away. So I pull up to shoot again, couldn't get a shot. Like, how?
What is going on
What
here?
is happening? Looking for blood, can't find it. So I remembered, dropped the clip, put a couple more rounds in, because that's another thing I've done too, is I'll get in a moment shooting at him
forget.
And pump a couple out, and
nothing in there.
Yeah, nothing in there, Or needed one more and
didn't have it.
Yeah. So I start going down along the edge, and I look out in the river, and he's crossing the river, but I could see his guts hanging out of him. So I'm like, I hit him, So he's crossing the river, and I'm trying to get a spot where I shouldn't say he's crossing. He's on the edge of the river. So I'm trying to get a spot where I could shoot through him, and it's all this brush, and I'm down in the water, knee-deep water. So I finally was like, I can't do it right now. And he was kind of looking back, but I don't know if it hooked back in enough. He wasn't sure. And I think with that water, it just had him all thrown off. I think his senses, he couldn't tell what I was, probably wounded. He'd been with that doe. I don't know if he was trying to find her and see what had happened. So I get back up on the bank, and he's back up on the bank now, heading back the other direction. So I shoot again, still stands there. Takes off, shoot again. Well, my gun had gotten knocked off at some point. So the last I see him, he swims a river, and he swims across this river, and I'm like, that's it. You know, I lost him.
Are they hearing you just cutting loose down in this river
so
bottom?
they're on the radio, you know, like, what is going on down there? So he swims out into the river, swims across it. I meet up with him at the truck, and I was like, I hit him good, but there was an island out in this river, and I'm like, I think he went onto that island. The last I saw him, he darted into it, and that was it. So I kind of tried to get up above it so I could look across. Same thing, all this alder brush, to see if maybe he was swimming out the other side and was if he was going to go into the next patch of woods. Never saw him come off, so I said, I'm going to come back first thing in the morning and go look where I saw him, obviously, to see if I can pick him up there. If not, we're going to have to go up because it was too deep to cross on the other side where if he would have swam it. So we come back in the morning, I cross, and it was about knee-deep water. You could walk across it pretty easily there. Get over there, start looking around. Couldn't find much. There was no blood. Instant discouragement. I'm like, I didn't get him. You know, this didn't work out. So we did a loop on it, and at the very tail of our loop where we came back to where he lay dead right there. So, and it's stiff as a board. I think, so he must have got.
So where was he when you found him?
He was on this island.
He was still on the island. How big was the island?
I would say probably like a 20-acre island, maybe.
Oh, this is pretty good size
so
island.
it's pretty
I'm picturing
long. It's big enough you can't see from one end to the other. And so when I came across it, there was a pretty good run that was beat in there, and it kind of ran the length of it. So I said, well, he probably hit that run and just ran up through there.
I got you. Yep.
But he had hooked a hard right where I hooked a hard left looking for him that morning. And he went right in, same thing, that alder brush. And so I came around the one side of the island, and I'm looking through there, and I'm like, that's a belly in there, I'm pretty sure. You know, so I came from the downhill side to him. It's like, yeah. And he had laid his head up on a log, and I walked up to him, and it was just...
What a buck.
Yeah, way bigger than what I expected when I shot at him. That was one, there was no ground shrinkage on that.
No, he's a nice heavy antler.
Yeah, and I weighed him out, and he was 185 pounds at that point.
Big buck,
yeah. So.
Do you score him too? Do you get him scored?
Same thing, never. But we threw a tape on him rough, mid-130s.
I was just say, he's all 130.
I was say he's 130.
Yeah. So is that photograph on the island?
Yes.
Okay,
that's
cool.
almost right where I found him.
So that's why it looks kind of open the background. That's probably the river
and
out
then,
behind it.
You have a lot of that. Well, I think it was a lot of poplar trees down along the island, so you have all those yellow leaves on it and stuff. Sure. And it first thing in the morning, so the light. It was just like, I got to get a picture in here. So I got
Christian, you have some great experiences, man. Like those are lifetime
you've
type
had some
hunts.
really great stories. Like that's awesome. That is awesome.
That makes me very excited for this upcoming season.
I know. Yeah. I'm getting antsy over here. But we're probably running about an hour and a half right now.
Yeah,
so
that was great.
It's probably a good spot to wrap it up. Thanks for coming on, man. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
As always, guys, go give us a like and follow on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, on or Adirondack Bucks and Beyond, and we'll catch you next time.